Y'all, all right. How you doing? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. I am here. I am here. I am here. Hope y'all are doing well. All right. I think I got it all going on all the streaming places. So let's jump into it. So happy Wednesday. Y'all, I am TaSheena. I'm an executive leadership and team coach, and I help teams and the leaders who lead them collaborate better, heal from conflict, and build systems that actually work without all the drama. And today, I want to talk about equity. I am sure you have heard the word equity everywhere in the news and things, and it's always attached to diversity and inclusion. But I want to specifically talk about the concept of equity because, it's an important topic. And when most people hear equity, they think of like pay equity or they think of representation equity. And yes, those are important, those are part of it. But true equity actually goes deeper than metrics. It's also something that lives in your systems and it really helps your systems to thrive and to be successful. Some ways that you could tell if your system is actually equitable is by looking at who has access to opportunities, how feedback is given and received, who has a say in different decisions, how performance is evaluated, and whose voice actually gets the opportunity to shape change. I want you to know that equity is not about this one big initiative. You don't say, oh, we're going to have this equity initiative. It is not that easy because, again, if you're in an inequitable environment, typically it's because it is deeply embedded in the systems. It's not something that's just on top that you could just fix overnight and you could just call an initiative and like call it fixed, call a solution. You can't do that. You have to actually look at all your everyday processes. You have to think of, I know people like to say the onion kind of analogy, but I like to use the artichoke analogy because when you pull back the layers of an artichoke, you eventually get to the center, the heart. And so that's what you need to do if you are trying to build an equitable environment because repeated actions that happen over time, whether you are including or excluding people, they show up in the system over time. You'll see it at the top, you'll see the symptom from it. So, on this day, this is day 12 of my 30 days of systems that make teams work. I am going to break down what equity looks like in organizations and in teams, where inequity hides, even in systems that are well meaning, that really have a good intention, but where does it hide? And how to redesign your processes so that they are fair, so that they are transparent, and so that they really focus on the human and our humanity. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, what is equity? What does equity in a system actually mean? So, equity isn't about equal treatment, it's about a fair access. Like you have access to everything from a fair standpoint. And even that is hard to really describe because it's also really not about fairness. But equity means like I am going to provide you access from the level that you're starting at so that you meet the same level someone else is at. And so I may have to give you more access than someone else, or I may have to do more or give more just so you can meet where the top person is at. And so equity, I'm going to show you the famous picture in a second, but equity is about access. It's about being able to kind of catch up to where someone else is at. It's also recognizing that people start from different places and that your systems can either close that gap or it can widen that gap. Okay. And so you want to be mindful of what that looks like. So let me go ahead and show you this picture because I think it is a great picture of equity. And I'm sure you all have seen this before. So this is the famous equity picture. I'm sure you all have seen this. And as you can see, one side it says equality. Equality is saying, like, I'm going to give all of you guys the same thing to stand on. So you all will have this one thing to stand on. But if you're this little guy in the purple, it's not very equitable. Like, it doesn't even solve anything because the person still can't see. But when you think about equity, equity says that I may have to give you more in order for you to see. So it's not that I'm taking away from this guy in the blue because he can already see over the fence. But I need to make it so that this fella in the purple can actually see and has the ability to watch the game. Now, I'm not going to get into the next. There's another photo that goes even further than this, which is true liberation. True liberation is like, let's just take down the entire fence. Let's just kill the whole fence, and everybody will be able to see, and we could just remove the barrier that's in between us. But until we get to true liberation, let's get to equity at least. Like, we may have to give more to certain individuals because they're starting from a place that they probably can't control, that it was just given to them and they need just a little bit more help. So I hope that's how you can see that and understand what equity is. Now, another example is like, you can have different things in your workplace, whether it's like a promotion or opportunities and things like that. But if only certain people know what it's all about or how to get that opportunity, it's not actually equity. It's like an insider advantage. And so I just want you to know, like, equity, we can look at it from many different ways. This is a good photo of just what equity is. I'm sure you have seen this. I'm sure this is nothing new to many of you, but I just want to remind us because there's so much talk about equity in our society. And we think that if we give somebody two kind of things to stand on, that means that it's taken away from this person. But it's not. As you can see, this person still has the ability to see the baseball game. And so we want to be reminded of that. It's important. It's important for us to see that and to really take that into account when we're seeing resources being given to certain groups. Okay. Take a moment, share this live. If you are watching this, share this to somebody who may need to hear this right now, somebody who's still trying to understand equity, somebody who may be in like losing their faith in being an equity lead. Send this to them, share this live while I'm talking. So share it for me, share it. All right. All right, so let's keep going. So, equity in systems, what does it mean? Like, let's break that down. So, the first thing, especially in systems and organizations on teams, the first thing that it means is that information is accessible. It's not hidden in who you know networks. Okay. Now, I want you to listen to me very clear because I'm saying this as somebody who values networking. And I believe that your network should absolutely be something that you can leverage. Like, the point of building a network is so that you can get resources, it is so that you can get opportunities opened up for you. And that is true, right? But there are people who are introverts or people who don't have the opportunity to be in certain communities. I think about how my children have had the opportunity to be at certain schools where they have certain access to resources. I think about my position of being on a board where I get to hear what's happening behind the scenes, how the structure is, and things like that, and have access to different information sources. And I am able to build a network that benefits me. However, there are certain things that shouldn't depend on who you know. Everyone deserves access to the same information to make the system fair and functional. And so I get information or my kids get access to information, they should know it. So I always say this. It's no surprise if you follow me on LinkedIn, you already know this, that I sit on the board of Gateway Public Schools, which is a charter school. And every time, like, charter schools isn't something that people talk a lot about. They really don't know. I remember talking to somebody this past Sunday, and they were talking about looking into schools for their child for high school. And I was like, oh, you should think about Gateway. It's a charter school. And they had no idea what it was. And I had to explain that because it's not a place that we always hear about, or we don't always hear about charter schools. And yeah, there are some, pros and cons that people have talked about. However, my two oldest kids went to charter school, went to Gateway. And when I tell people that Gateway High School has gotten 93% of the graduates into college. And y'all, I'm not talking about any college. I'm talking about colleges overseas. I'm talking about your Stanfords, your Harvards, HBCUs. Of course, there's UC system if you're in California. These, like, people are actually going to college. 93% are going to college. Even at a city college level. Like, I am a product of city college, so ain't no shame in my game. I'm here, and I think I'm smart, and I think I made a pretty good deal of my life. And so 93%, but that's information that I don't think should be hidden. I think that's information we need to know. And if I can connect with one person and allow them to leverage me for a resource in order to get the best schooling for their child, that's important. The same thing with our workplaces. Maybe we're in a workplace where we need information in order to make decisions. I shouldn't have to like bang down the door of a senior leader, group in order to get that information if it's going to help me do my job well. So there's certain information that needs to be accessible, and it shouldn't depend on, man, do you know this person is a senior leader, and do you know them? Can you get them to get there? Can you get the information for me? It shouldn't depend on that. Everyone should have access to this senior leader. That's why I think skip level meetings are so important, and every senior manager should invest in skip level meetings in their reporting lines. I also think that senior leaders should mentor different individuals at different levels. I think one of the greatest things that I've ever had in my career is two different senior leaders who really poured into me, helped me to understand the politics of corporate life, helped me to get access to certain things, get decisions made on my behalf. That is important. Okay. That's information that I had to get or that I was privy to in order to be successful in my job. So that's the first thing. Equity in a system means that you have information accessible to you. The second thing is that rules are transparent. We're going to make sure that everybody knows the rules, and it's not going to shift or be different based on who is asking. Nothing gets under my skin more than when people bend the rules for certain people. I believe what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. If you don't know what that means, all I'm saying is what's good for one should be good for everybody. It is very hard to have a environment of learning, of creativity, of innovation, or even for trust when people are constantly guessing how things actually work. Like, let's put it on the table. This is how this works. This is how meetings get ran here. This is how we make decisions here. This is who you need to talk to here. This is how you should this is the etiquette that you should have on a meeting. Like, we should be clear about the rules. Don't have rules, and then when somebody breaks a rule that is so-called like a standard rule, you have consequences for them because they did that when they thought they were just following what someone else was doing. And so that's the other part of it, is like the rules should be standard across. That's why I believe in standard processes. I believe in capabilities for all. And I believe the measurements and things like that should be equitable. Everybody should have the same type of, standards that they have to adhere to. So rules are transparent. And then the third thing is that opportunities are distributed. It's not concentrated by who's the favorite or who I'm comfortable with. I want to have opportunities distributed and well known and made and put in my awareness no matter where I am at. in the organization. No matter what level, no matter what team, no matter what, I should know what different opportunities are out there, because I believe that favoritism and comfort are the biggest barriers to growth for both the individual and the entire system. So if I am favoring you, typically what happens over time is that we get a monolith of people, we start to abide by the status quo, and then we start hiring people into our organization because they're bright and they just have such good energy and great ideas, and then we want them to drink our Kool-Aid because we are so focused on similarity and things like that, right? And that really happens when we're doing favoritism. That really happens because it's a known fact. If you have worked in in diversity, DEI, if you've worked in that before, you know that we tend to gravitate towards people that are just like us, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we have to be aware that sometimes we need other people that are not just like us. We need some change. We need some different momentum and energy in our spaces. Okay? So that's what equity and systems mean. Information is accessible, rules are transparent, and opportunities are distributed. So let me tell you where inequity hides out, and so that you can be aware of this, because inequity is not usually loud, it's not always unintentional, or it's not intentional. Like, we're not trying, not all systems are trying to be inequitable. However, I say this again, sometimes it's deeply rooted in our systems and we can't get around that unless it comes to our awareness, which I'm going to talk about right now, because it's often baked right into the system. It's baked into how we show up, how we run our organization, how decisions are made, how feedback happens, who knows who, what circles you can be in, the good old boys club, like all of these things, right? And so I want to share that with you. So the first place is at the entry point to every organization. Can anybody guess what that is? What is the entry point to every organization? Hiring and onboarding. There is no organization if you aren't doing some level of hiring and onboarding. And so, where I see inequity show up is first in the job descriptions. Y'all, let me tell you, the way some of these job descriptions are written, it's like you have to come in and be the best thing happening from the gate. Like, it's almost like there's no room written for learning, right? I don't know if I've ever saw on an app a job description that you have to be a learner. You have to be willing to iterate. You have to be willing to experiment, or a track record of experimentation, a track record of learning, a track record of iteration. Y'all, HR managers, if you are watching this live, get that on your job descriptions, right? Because when we expect people to be perfect as soon as they walk in, we do ourselves a disservice, because now we are unintentionally telling people that they need to get in line fast and there's no room for any mistakes, right? We say that, right? So we might say people must have a list of qualifications, and if they don't check every box, we overlook them and we go to somebody else. And this could be a super great candidate. This could be a great candidate who totally learns fast, is a quick learner, can really get on board really fast, has some great ideas, has transferable skills, but we look over them because they don't check all the boxes. And it's a known fact that women 9 times out of 10 will not even apply if they can't check every box. But where did they get the idea? Where did we, ladies, get the idea that we have to check every box? Our systems have taught us that. Our systems have said, we get feedback from interviews and we're like, yeah, but you weren't able to kind of articulate that you did this thing. And so we weren't sure. So we went with another candidate. We already want somebody who's further ahead or further doing this. We have learned that's the way we have to show up, right? So job descriptions, let's get them together. Let's make them more less of a unicorn and more like holistic and more the environment, the values that you say you have as an organization. The second thing is it's very referral heavy. So the recruiting replicates the same type of person all the time. So here is a great example. I remember there was this like reach out to college, like try to get college students initiative that I was a part of. And I remember that the people who reached out, the recruiters, they reached out to the same kind of like Ivy League schools. They only reached out to them for a very long time. And it was like, if you're only going to reach out to those, you are missing an entire population of people who are just as equally qualified. I'm talking about our HBCUs. I'm talking about our junior colleges. Y'all, I went to San Francisco City College, City College of San Francisco. City College of San Francisco has one of the best STEM programs at a junior college level. It really, really does. But the organizations don't typically go for a junior college student, which is so sad because a lot of these students are really hard workers, are really bright students, are really great potential for our organizations. And so if our referral process is only geared to one area, there's some inequity happening. And we're going to see the same type of people always show up, and we keep our system the same. We keep our system rooted in this inequitable environment. Okay. The third thing is that when it comes to hiring onboarding, we already assume everyone already knows how things work here. So we onboard people and we're like, oh, okay, so you should already know this. Like, this is what it is. And when the process isn't inclusive, now new hires feel behind before they even start. I talked about how I was being actually, I only put this in my email. Actually, if you're on my email list, get on my email list because I talked about this in my email list. I might have talked about this on LinkedIn, but I can't remember. I'm just like everywhere, y'all. And in that, I talked about how I was being onboarded and to a committee. And when I was being onboarded to this committee, it was like an assumption that I already knew what was happening. And there was not a clear onboarding process. It was like, okay, this is how things are. And boom, go do the work. And I was like, I'm confused. I have no idea what's going on here. I have no idea what's happening. And so, right from the gate, that sets me up inequitably because now I have to try to catch up and the train is still moving and I'm trying to run after the train. I'm never going to catch up. I'm just not that fast. What I need is for the train to stop. Let me hop on and then let's talk. That's what I need. That's an equitable environment or a more equitable environment. And don't get me started on these bias AI tools. I know AI is a big thing right now, and there's a lot of bias in AI because, especially when it comes to hiring, onboarding, y'all, it will immediately filter out qualified candidates before a human even looks at their application. That has happened to me before, where I was told that the AI whatever in the background immediately took me out of the process because I didn't have a certain amount of years of experience. Thank God I knew somebody. I was like, dude, like, why am I not even being considered? Like, you know me, right? Because it was my network, right? And so I realized like we have gone so far away from the human side of our world and we're so digitized and we're all about AI and AI can be good, but anything overused can also be a weakness. I also believe anything that is intended to make things faster, there is a huge downside on the other side of that, right? Because there's not a lot of like things you're putting into it to really help and to really be successful at it. And so y'all, if you are going to depend on AI tools, I need you to kind of tell the AI tool a little bit more about what you're looking for, because it is not getting the right thing. Like if you're putting years of experience, don't put that. Do not put years of experience. There's some people who don't have the years of experience, but shot up in their career really fast. But it was like they shot up in their career really fast in years, like not even years, right? Y'all, I went from an administrative assistant to a director level in about 2, 3 years. Now, if you were to put me on an application that said I needed to have 10 years of experience, you're not going to get, the AI tool is going to reject me. But then I had that level. You see what I'm saying? You're following me. You're picking up what I'm putting down. I hope so. So that's hiring and onboarding. The second thing is decision making. We make decisions in closed circles. So it only is the people that's at the boardroom table or the people behind the scenes. And we don't really bring people into these decisions that need to be made. Again, the person closest to the work should be helping to make decisions. Meetings that are scheduled at times that exclude caregivers or even remote teammates, you know, let's just call a thing a thing. We are in a society with moms, with caregivers. I have been in both. And had it not been for the team that I had and the organization that I worked for, I don't know how I would have survived it. I don't know, because the ability to work from home, the ability to leave work a little bit earlier, the ability to be able to go to some appointments during the day or take my mom when she was alive to an appointment, that was like chef's kiss for me. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that, especially considering that my mom is no longer here. But maybe you're a parent, you only get one shot at every stage of their life. And if you miss too much of that, you don't get to go back. They don't become a baby again. And so when we're in decision making, when we have meetings and things are happening, you can see inequity happening if you're like, well, that person isn't here, so we're going to move forward without them being involved in the decision. That's not equitable at all. And then if information is hoarded instead of shared, this keeps people from contributing meaningfully. The meetings, when you exclude them, also prevents people from contributing meaningfully as well. And so we just want to make sure that we give people the opportunity to really show up and to contribute the way that they can. The next thing is performance reviews and promotions. There is bias in who gets stretch assignments. I know this very well. Like there wasn't like, I can't say that I always got a lot of opportunity to take on stretch assignments. And sometimes when I did, it was only for a small period of time. Like it wasn't as long as other people, but that can be an inequitable environment. It can show up as inequity if you are not giving people the stretch assignments that will help them grow their career, right? And I know there's a lot of ego sometimes with leaders where they're like, I don't want to give my person away, or I'm going to have to replace them if they take on this assignment, or some work is going to have to go to somebody else, and that's going to put some pressure on everybody. But that's if that's a problem for you and you're feeling like pressure will be put on somebody else, I need you to go check in with your systems and your processes, because if your systems and your processes in those systems are set up well, there will be no pressure, because that just tells me that this person's role is a lot of pressure if the pressure is going to be put on somebody else. So I just want you to think about that, okay? Just think about that. That's some tea for you, okay? Feedback that's vague for some and hyper specific for others. Black women typically don't get the type of feedback that they need, that they deserve. And so it doesn't show up in the right way. They don't know what to do with it, or they just don't get anything. And they're like, what the hell am I supposed to do with that? I have coached so many Black women and men lately where I'm just telling them, like, you got to be specific. What is it that you expect from me? What does that look like? How do you know that I am successful? When you want feedback, what should I say? how I want you to give me feedback. When should I come to you if I'm having a problem? Like, you have to get so specific. Don't leave any questions unturned, because otherwise you're not going to get the type of feedback that you need. Once you are specific on expectations, then you can ask questions to get the feedback that you need, that's very hyper specific based on those expectations that they share with you, right? Once you get vague type of feedback, then that's when it goes to, like, some rules are for some people and not others. It's very subjective, and it's good for them and not good for me. That's when you get into that kind of swirl and mess. And then credit going to the loudest voice instead of the most effective contributor. So being talked over, if you're an introvert and somebody just blurts out, like, this is what you should do, and this is how I think, and you don't have time in a meeting to actually talk, and then you get to your performance review and they're like, you never contributed and you never really showed us what you could do. We want to hear your ideas. We want to hear more from you. And, like, dog, like, not dog, bro. Like my kids say, bro, they never let me talk in the meeting. I felt like I had to, like, yell to talk over them, or by the time they finished, like, we were on to the next topic and I didn't have time to actually share, right? If that's showing up in your review, that's a problem, because that means that meeting hasn't been set up systemically in order for you to succeed, in order to be able to contribute your ideas. That's where round robins are important, sticky notes are important, things that can give another way for you to share your ideas are important. And the last thing is communication norms, assuming everyone processes the information the same way. I think about schools that only reward students who thrive in lecture based environments. I remember my daughter was in second grade, and this was so vivid for me. And I tell other parents to this day about this, and being specific with teachers. I remember there was a teacher who was big about, I go to the board, I write on the board, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to talk you to death. You supposed to remember it. You supposed to study it, and then I'm gonna test you, and you better get the test. Like, not that you better get the test right, but I hope you pass that test. And I remember having to have a real hard, crucial conversation with this teacher and telling them, like, you're rewarding the people who are good with those lecture type of environments. I can tell you, my daughter and a lot of other people of color, we are used to environments where we can use our hands, where we can music and rhymes, where we can get up and build things, where we can, actually position ourselves and embody the experience. Like, that's how we learn. And so if you're only rewarding people who process information one way, you are going to lose a lot of students, and students will not like you. Not that the teacher needs to be liked, but I think, if they want to show that they're an effective teacher, they have to do things a different way. It can't just be a lecture based environment. And that's probably why, even now when I coach, I like to have immersive experiences that are really about embodying the lessons, embodying the patterns, so that people actually feel what it feels like to be in a toxic team, or what it feels like to notice patterns on your team. Shout out to my email for tomorrow. I am talking about how I use games and coaching. So if you are not on my email list, go ahead and click the link in my bio, or if you're on LinkedIn, in my featured, and get on my email list so that you can get that email about how I use games in my coaching. But this is how we do things. Like, if you are in an environment that's not equitable for everyone, you're probably going to teach one way, and it's going to be one way that you're going to communicate information. But I talked about pro-site change management, and I remember pro-site change management, what they tell you is that sometimes not sometimes, all the time, you're going to have to repeat things over and over and over again, and you're probably going to have to repeat it in different ways. It might be written, it might be verbal, it might be a picture, it might be a song. Like, whatever it is, you are going to have to repeat that over and over and over again. Okay. And when it comes to communication, if we are rewarding people who speak up, fast instead of the people that speak deeply, I've never, ever got rewarded for being thoughtful and thinking deeply about things. Never. As an introvert, I've never been like, as I'm thinking about it right now, like I've never been rewarded for that. So I've been taught that I have to be more extroverted, that I have to hurry up, I have to be quick on my feet. I'll even tell even my husband today, I'll tell him, and I'm like, I'm not quick on my feet. I have to be very prepared. I can't just say things off the top of my head because I've never been rewarded for anything other than fast, quick, get it out. Like, and so that could be inequitable for some people. And then mistaking silence for agreement. If you are one of those people that are like, oh, yeah, they agree because they didn't say anything, they didn't mention anything, we voted and they just nodded their head, and you think that that's agreement, again, that is how inequity hides. These aren't just people problems, these are process problems. And when you fix the process, then you'll see that the people will actually start to thrive in their roles and they'll be better employees. Okay. So, how do you build equity into everyday systems? You don't fix inequity with a DEI initiative. So, stop trying to say it's just all about DEI because that's not always what it's about. Sorry, y'all. Somebody is at my door. Hold on 1 second. All right, so that was my son. He came in at the wrong time in the middle of this live. I thought he was going to be at football practice, but he's not. But you don't fix it by just a simple DI initiative. You fix it by baking an equity into your processes. So here are 5 ways that you can do that. First of all, audit your processes through an equity lens. I want you to ask yourself who benefits from the system as it currently works and who gets left behind. The way that you can do this is map your workflow and look at where people lose access, visibility, or opportunity. Consider how people take in information. You may need to communicate both verbally and in writing, and then more than once. And again, in ProScience change management work, they found that people need to hear a message multiple times and multiple ways before it truly sticks. Equity works the exact same way. It has to be consistent, clear, repeated communication that will eventually create this inclusive, equitable environment that you want. So, audit your processes through an equity lens, starting with the question who benefits from this system as it currently works and who gets left behind. The second thing, make invisible rules visible. Write down all the unwritten stuff. So write down how decisions are getting made, who people are going to, what success looks like, what criteria matters for certain things, how do we show up to meetings. I remember my last organization, it was like nobody ever comes to a meeting on time, right? It always starts 5 minutes after, right? Is that an unwritten rule? Write it down. If people need to guess about what the rules are, it's not equitable. One of the most common invisible rules, again, is in live meetings: when to show up, who gets to speak, and what counts as good contribution. Make the expectations explicit. Make the implicit explicit. Shout out to my fave Raz, if she ever hears this. She always said, make the implicit explicit. And now I say that all the time. The third thing, build feedback loops that are inclusive, create multiple ways for people to share input, whether it's surveys, open office hours, focus groups, retrospectives. Figure out how you can get the feedback loops because not everyone feels safe speaking up the same way. We know that. You know for yourself, depending on the context, depending on where you are, you might not want to speak up in the same way as everyone else. So make it so that people have multiple ways to speak up and share feedback. The fourth thing is to normalize transparency in every opportunity. Post all internal openings publicly. Don't just keep it under the, inside your desk or behind the office door for just your favorites. make it visible, and then rotate leadership on visible projects. It shouldn't always be the same people that's being called. It should not. You should give other people that opportunity as well, especially if you are considering yourself to be a learning environment that actually is all about experimentation and iteration and learning. Give everybody that opportunity. And then share how recognition and rewards are decided. It should be the same across the board. There shouldn't be like, we did this because this person went above and beyond on this thing. Okay, so if that's a measurement that we're rewarding people, make it plain to everybody. I have been in situations where somebody will do something. I'm like, oh, that's how you get rewarded? Okay, bet. I'm going to do it too. And I've done it. It was like, oh, okay, that's good. You did that. And I'm like, okay, but this person got a whole bonus from that. Why not me? Oh, because, it wasn't something that they were supposed to do. It was above and beyond. Yeah, uh-huh. It was above and beyond for my job too. Yeah, but, this person, they thought of the idea first and they just, oh, okay. So if we're going to actually reward and recognize people, let's be equitable about it. And then the fifth thing is measure and iterate. What gets measured gets managed. So track participation, promotion, track your attrition in your organization, but you also need to track belonging and access. Who has access? Who feel like there's a sense of belonging? I know that this kind of fell on the DEI groups, but those DEI groups are being kind of eliminated due to our current environment. So, who is actually measuring belonging? Who actually feels like they belong? Who's measuring the access? We should be embedding all the things from having a standalone DEI like team or organization or function to embedding all of that into our systems. Okay. And when you do that, there is no need for a DEI thing because now we're all working collectively systemically. Okay. One simple way to do this again is through retrospectives. These are the regular reflection moments that help you see what's working, what's not, and what needs adjusting. If you could do this all the time and just check in and ask yourself, you are measuring what's working and you are iterating based on what you think needs adjusting. And so you want to do that all the time. Okay. So those are the 5 things. I'll repeat it one more time. Audit your processes through an equity lens, make invisible rules visible, build inclusive feedback loops, normalize transparency in your opportunities, and measure and iterate. Okay. So here's your reflection this week. Where does inequity hide in everyday systems that you work in? Everything from hiring to decisions to feedback to meetings to projects, high visibility projects, opportunities to culture shaping to bonuses, pay, promotions. Where does inequity hide in all of that? Whose access depends on relationships instead of process. So, who seems to get ahead because they know somebody? Y'all, that alone is going to tell you so much. It's also going to give you a shoe in or kind of like visibility into your networks and where the networks lie and who holds power. If you didn't hear my live about power, go back and listen to that. But just asking yourself whose access depends on relationships instead of process, that's going to tell you a lot. And then what's one small process you can redesign for fairness and visibility? What's one small process? Maybe it's that in our meetings from now on, the way we get everyone to speak is we're going to use sticky notes. Boom, there you go. One small thing that's going to open the door for more conversation. Because equity is not built in a policy, it's built in the patterns and in the systems that we have shaped. And when you shift the patterns, you shift the power that's happening across the organization. In closing, I want you to know that equity isn't a side project, it's a system design choice. And if you want your team to move with trust, with confidence, and shared ownership, you have to build equity into the bones of how you work, deep in the bones and the soul of how you work. Because when everyone has access to the same information, the same opportunities, and they have the same clarity about what that looks like, your system becomes a system of lots of quality, lots of equity, and you'll be able to move forward on your in your team successfully. All right, I hope this was helpful for you. It went longer than I thought, and excuse me for my little break because my son decided to come home. I've got to go see what was going on, why he's not at football practice. But I'll see you all tomorrow. I will be back here. I am going to be talking about culture. Culture. Let's talk about culture. Let's talk about culture because culture doesn't rule all. Sometimes it's systems. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. See y'all later. Bye.